Hi everyone, I'm Sunny, and today's video is going to be about Pluto in the third house or Pluto in Gemini. So whichever is your placement, this is a great video for you. It's going to be a quick overview, more or less, I think. I'm trying not to take too long, so I apologize if you feel like it's too long. So with Pluto in the third house, it's not in its worst placement, I feel, because it is mercurial energy, and Mercury does well, I feel, in the 8th house, but reversing it back to 8th to the 3rd house. It is, of course, transformative and traumatic, yes, but I don't want to undermine its power, because it is pretty Pluto in any placement is still pretty heavy, pretty scary to have, regardless of where you decide to have it. Well, I don't think you decide to have it, you're just given it. But with this placement, communication is very transformative. You might not want to own up to the fact that there's power in your voice, there's power in your opinion, there's power in the things that you have to share and to teach. But for some reason, people around you might try to take that power away from you, or have done it. Whether they just blatantly told you that you were not as significant as you think you could be, or your reach isn't as how can I say, your reach isn't as valuable as you think. They might try to kind of impose that idea that you're not worthy of being listened to. So you kind of just shut down, possibly, and try not to share that your opinion so much. And you might try to not, it's not that you might want to, how can I say, it's not that you want to evade it, you're just gonna try to be secretive of it. It feels more so that you communicate in secret, possibly. So when you talk to people, you could possibly, your preference might be more so whispering or being soft-spoken. I could also think that you might prefer to text or email or write letters. It feels so much more that, how can I communicate without having prying eyes? So you're going to do your best to communicate without people noticing you. So you might also consider talking about things, anything that interests you, anything about your opinions, in media, likely. Maybe I think I always use these examples, but maybe you might prefer doing these through TikTok, through Tumblr, to Instagram, Facebook, where you might possibly have your own niche where you might feel comfortable, or you might express more comfortability in expressing yourself. And also, you might also be having a secret hidden I'm not trying to say you have a Finsta, but you might prefer that, where you have your secret accounts to be more open about what really interests you, your opinions, and likely it's things that you have, little hobbies. I feel it's more so secretive hobbies that you want people to not ask you about, because people always evade it. It feels so much more that you have this idea that people won't care, so therefore what's the point of sharing that publicly? I think you'd rather share that with people who might show that same interest and who might support you in that soft, private way, because I think they might share that too. So it's an interesting energy you might also notice, which is how you're going to get your power back. I think building that confidence might take you a while. I don't think any Pluto placements, I feel, are never something that you can take lightly, where it's oh, I went through this and then everything was better after. It's more so possibly lifelong. So you might feel extremely anxious, extremely scared, but you eventually kind of tread with caution and finally dip your toes in the water, finally open yourself to that communication, open yourself to sharing your thoughts and opinions and your writing and your voice. And maybe you could advocate for things, but it feels much more than just a light issue. I make it seem very lightly, but it's very deep. It's psychological trauma, likely. And I think every placement, regardless of the placement that I say, is going to be psychologically traumatic. But with you, it has a lot to do with the confidence in yourself, confidence in your speech, in your mind, in your words. And people might have put you down for many various reasons. Maybe you were how can I say, physically scarred, right? Or imposed on, that you could not speak. So let's say let's put it lightly, let's put it simply, to where you might have had a traumatic accident, right? Not so much somebody else, but typically Pluto is outside sources imposing on that sometimes the trauma. But let's say you had a vehicle accident, because this is Gemini. Gemini is still short distance travel and vehicles too. So let's say you have this and you end up having an injury in your mouth, right? All the mouth just kind of entail other placements as well, not just this one. But let's say you have that, and maybe you ended up having to not be able to talk for many weeks and months, so you kind of have that power taken away from you in that way. So you rely on other ways of communication, like social cues, expressive cues, right? Those are social cues. And maybe also your writing, signaling and like what I spaced out. What's that? Not signaling. There's I can't think of the sign language. I'm so sorry. You signal in sign language too. So you rely on these other transformative forms of communication to share your thoughts. And it could be scary because sometimes you might not get the message across, but it's a work in progress. It's things like that. So it's not always something very it is always going to be traumatic, but it's not always like extremely what's the proper way of saying, I guess the best way of saying it, it's not always doom and gloom when it comes to Pluto. It can be scary, it can be life altering, but you typically learn something internally from it. And maybe that's not always something that you want to listen to, because I think the difference between Pluto and Saturn, for example, is that Saturn at least gives you a reward in regards to the house placement, and Pluto tends to give you that good job in the pat, like a pat. Good job. You build yourself that confidence you needed. You build yourself self reliance, independence. Good for you. You build yourself good, healthier boundaries. Good for you. It's things that people might not see. People can physically see. It's not like, oh, you earned yourself this new house. Good for you. No, it's gonna be like, oh, you earned yourself the comfort of a stable home, regardless of where you're at. Good for you. And that home could possibly be within you. It's things that are unseen, and especially in Gemini, it's of the mind. So the security of feeling confident and powerful within your own mind. And that's maybe not something you want to hear, but security within is something that sometimes is very needed for others and for maybe you. But again, it's something that you're going to take some time to own up to, or maybe appreciate, because it's not something that you are going to see right away. I think that internal change, it's like psychological change, is going to take a long time. And it's funny because Gemini is a very playful energy, so you might notice there's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek way of expressing yourself, cheekiness, dark humor. There's a tongue-in-cheek way of maybe receiving information or traumatic events, and you might just have a dark humor way. I think of Pete Davidson's comedy, where he expresses himself in comedy, and he talks about very dark things that have happened in his life that are healing in some way, possibly to others, healing to himself, because he's openly talking about things that Pluto wants to keep secret. So he brings that humor to it, and he's like, well, I'm working through it, but this is what it is. And maybe bringing light to it might shed some comfort in people and comfort for me. So it's like there's this healingness in it, but still pretty, it's a little dark and heavy, but it's, I think, I mean, there's some depth to this, but still some playfulness. It's very gestury, but it's in that way. I think maybe comedy might, dark comedy or dark humor might bring you some comfort or some ease into the harshness that Pluto can give you. So these are some examples. I think, as well as if you have, sorry, my allergies are flaring up, so I'm a little nasally and itchy in my nose. So I think as well, Pluto can bring you a lot of psychological trauma as it is that others can't see, but you just don't know it. It's like it's boiling underneath the surface, and at some point it eventually kind of, bursts out like a pimple. So you basically have to deal with it, and you're forced to bring it out into the light, and it might take you a while to get the hang of it, but you could get the hang of how to heal your Pluto placement by acknowledging it and researching what's really going on deep down. Why is this always happening? Why do you get triggered by maybe third house items and things and subjects like school or short distance travel or friendships and maybe siblings and close family? Like, sorry, I want to sneeze. sorry, I didn't want to sneeze. I'm sorry. No, I'm gonna, sorry. I tend to sneeze consecutively. I don't want to do that. But anyways, going back to this, you could have that trauma or that fear. There's a lot of fear in these things because maybe you didn't grow up to have good relationships with people around you, with your teachers, with your community. It was very traumatic because you maybe constantly changed, or maybe constantly never got close to people, or maybe they always made fun of you. You could have been teased a lot, or you could have been made fun of how you speak, how you communicate, how you learn. You could have had traumatic events relating to these things, or friendships where they talked behind your back and you didn't know whether to trust people or not. It's traumatic themes and activities that happen within these third house themes within your early years, right? Your early formative years. Sorry. And it might be something that's a bit of a wound for you when it comes to thinking about these things. So you might have had that power taken away from you, and you were left with a lot of pain, and you maybe brushed it off to the back of the end of your head or your mind, sorry, and you just ignored it until maybe you have to go back and go back to your city for X reason, and then you accidentally meet people and it triggers you, or you visit your childhood environments and it triggers you, or you realize that many of the things that you were interested in, like activities, like maybe you played sports, or maybe you painted or something, and people made fun of it, and every time you think about it and you want to do a hobby with your hands and dexterity, because that's also Gemini, it's hands, you feel dumb, and you feel like people are gonna make fun of you, and they're not gonna want to see your things and appreciate it, because there's this power dynamic within that. So learning to basically receive that power back by doing the things that you possibly were hurt by is something that's going to be possibly a long life journey. It's not going to be something you might do and get away with not feeling the after effects right away. it's very, I've mentioned this before with like the past placements, but it's something that you're gonna have to know that it's a wound, but it's something that you will heal from, and you will gain your power by learning and researching what things actually make you tick, especially when it comes to your mind. I think your mental health has a lot to do with this, and I think you could suffer from a lot of things that are unseen to the eye, but nobody else is experiencing this other than you. So it might be difficult for you to open up to people because they don't know what's going on. They might not have that traumatic event of like connecting the dots from like your childhood to present day you. So you will keep this secretive. It's like all these things, all these third house things are going to be something that you purposely try to keep secret because you don't want people to find out. You don't want people, it might read as mysterious. Every house placement you have Pluto in is going to be mysterious for the person that's an outsider. It's like, oh, this person's so mysterious about this. Why? Well, because there's this Pluto wound in there that's trying to not allow people to kind of see through and be, allow the person to be exposed and vulnerable for things that could happen further down when it comes to these house placements for specific Pluto placements, and especially yours is third house theme. So expressing yourself with within your close vicinity, like your family, your friends, your community, your school, your learning habits, your hobbies, your mental health, your short distance travel. You could have also had maybe frequent car accidents, for example, and that was traumatic for you. Maybe just owning a vehicle is very traumatic for you. Things like that are just like a wound for you. It's like, oh, I don't want to get behind the wheel, or I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to go back to my high school reunion, or I don't want to expose myself. Like, I don't want to go have that family reunion, or like meet with my cousins or siblings, because it's not, there is always a power dynamic of like who's better than you, or like they mentally tortured you a lot psychologically that you just don't want to put yourself in that space again. So you avoid it, and it's something that you're going to have to slowly heal of like, how can I approach this without making the wound deeper than it already is, right? So Pluto is going to obsess over how to keep this a secret and private as much as possible, and how you also want to, with 8th house themes putting the 8th house into the 3rd house as well, you might also want to not exploit, but I can't find a better proper word. You might want to exploit people's income through these as well, because you might want to be attracted to take that power back by, maybe having other people investing these things for you, and you just want to like keep this to yourself. You just want to like earn people's money. Like, example, if you're someone that becomes a teacher, for example, and you are trying to earn what are they, the school activity, I forgot what they're called, the school activities where you fundraise, there you go, where you fundraise for things that are needed for the classroom or for the kids, things like that, and you know that those kids happen to be the people that they were the kids of the parents that maybe bullied you or things like that. So you try to like get them to invest more on the purposes of schools, stuff like that. I mean, this is such minor things, but this is one example that can happen, right? So this is a mild one. You can also learn to, I don't want to say take that power back by taking it away from the same people, because you might not always get the chance to. I think every placement has to know that too, that you might not take the power back from the same people, but you could take that power back from other people that don't deserve it. So again, you have to be careful with, are you really getting your revenge back by doing what others did to you? So consider that as some things that can happen. But again, these are just some things that you might see. I will likely also post more notes, because I always end up forgetting. I think I glossed over this a little bit more than I would have liked. But again, it's things like that. But I definitely think that maybe you also have it adding to this a Plutonian energy when it comes to your siblings. Like I said earlier, because maybe there's jealousy, there's envy, and there's this anger. There's a lot of repressed anger possibly that you aren't expressing, rightfully so, and you could productively do that by maybe healing it with the third house hobbies, or investing yourself in your own community. It doesn't even have to be the old previous one that was very traumatic for you, but maybe a new one, something that makes you feel more comfortable, that you feel that you have more reins and power and control over. So that could be some examples, right? So I will continue to add more notes to this, and I hope you guys enjoyed this Pluto video. So thank you all and have a good day. Bye bye.